Now it's my pleasure and honor to introduce our guest reader, Steven Karstein. He moved to Prescott and where he embraced a fresh chapter of life in 2016. As the marketing and program manager at the Elks Theater Performing Arts Center, right exactly where we are, he immersed himself in the world of the performing arts, something new for him at the time. Exposed to up close and personal with musicians, dancers, artists, and now writers, he discovered a newfound passion that enriched and nurtured him. Upon retiring from the Elks, Steven embarked on a literary journey, crafting short stories that were wove together his past and present experiences. He began telling his stories and assisting in AZ Wordsmith's Prose open mic nights, and he's very much responsible for getting our 501c3, and also as a co-founder of our storytelling group, Stories That Matter. Tonight he's going to read from a memoir piece called Daylight Donuts. Let's welcome Steven.
Do you need a timer? Are you okay?
Do I want to time it? No, because I'll go over.
You won't.
I'm pretty close, but not quite. When I was reading this to myself, I was pacing around reading it, so I'm going to sit and do it. Give me something to hold on to. So, context. These are the last few hours of my wife's life. She passed away a few years ago, and after a long decline, where I became full-time caretaker for her. But this is the end. At 2 in the morning, you were awake. I don't think you knew I was. You were moaning in pain. You said out loud to me, maybe to me, please let me go. I turned to you and said, what? And you replied, I don't feel well. I asked you what hurts, and you said, my tummy. It could have been anything. The meds upset your stomach and changed your sense of taste. You barely ate anything anymore. It was all I could do to get you to have some peanut butter or a sip of some of the shakes that I made for you. You were literally disappearing in front of me, and I couldn't stop it. You had lost so much weight that your only skin stretched over the barest amount of muscle and bone. I turned on the light on the nightstand beside me and sat up. I looked at you and called 911. The paramedics loaded you into the back of the ambulance. You were awake at that moment, and the people inside were working on you. They were putting new pads on your chest. I yelled back into you that I would be right behind and would see you at the hospital. The doors closed to the vehicle with a final slam, and you left. I watched as the ambulance pulled away and turned the corner. No lights, no siren. There was no traffic at that early hour, and I arrived at Yavapai Regional Medical Center pretty quickly. I recalled while I drove other trips we made with me running all the lights all the way. I walked into the emergency room, and as I came through the self-opening double doors, they made a whooshing sound as they opened and closed behind me. The security guard looked up from whatever he was doing. He looked me up and down and decided I wasn't a threat and went back to his meditations. On my left was the desk with the admitting nurse. I told him who I was and that they had just brought you in. He asked me to spell your name. Carter, I said. C-A-R-T-E-R, first name Ellen, E-L-L-E-N. His fingers clapped on the keyboard in front of him. He asked me to take a seat, and he would let them know that I was here. I took the seat I did before. It was across from the vending machines. They still flashed to get your attention where you put your money in to get a soda, some water, or chips while you sat. The seat was lucky. You always came home when I sat in it before. I was hopeful that this day would be the same. It didn't take long for a nurse to come through the double doors at the far end of the waiting room. She approached me and asked if I was Mr. Carter. I smiled a bit and nodded my head. I was kind of used to it at that point, being Mr. Carter. Of course, I was the only person in the place, so she had a pretty good shot of me being the right one. She asked me to follow her back. She brought me down the long, long corridor lined each side by small rooms. Most were empty and the curtains were open. A couple must have been occupied, those curtains were closed. You were in a room at the end of the hall. It was a real room with glass windows in the front instead of a curtain. Opening the door, she let me in. She said that the doctor would be here in a moment to talk to me. She closed the door as she left. I was alone in the room, except for you in the bed in front of me. You were unconscious and had a full mask on. It covered most of your face. I could see your closed eyes and your still pale-covered forehead. Lines ran from countless bags attached to tubes into your arms on both sides. There were wires as well running from your chest, arms, and head into an assortment of devices stacked up behind you. Everything made noise as they monitored all of your vitals. In one corner to my left, there was a small plastic chair. I walked up to you as you lay there. I bent over and let you know that I was there and picked up your hand. It was small and cold as I covered it with mine. All I could do was stand there waiting for the doctor to come in and whisper words of encouragement. I told you that you were strong and to fight. I'm not sure if the words were for you or me, or probably both. I looked at the monitors that showed your respiration was very low. Your heartbeat was erratic. It was beating fast and slow. Then it seemed like it skipped beats before it would pop up again. I looked at your bony legs, the thin bony legs that were exposed from under the blanket, and saw that your right leg had changed. The thin parchment-like skin, where it was not blackened by hematomas that occurred every time you bumped into something, or worse, tore off in sheets, was now mottled with the look of pale marble from just about the knee down. Then the ER doctor came in. He looked at the monitors, taking in all the readings in a few moments. He looked at the leg that had the strange coloring, turning the foot left and right, picking it up and holding it in his hands for a moment. He turned to me and introduced himself, and I told him that I was Steven, Ellen's husband. He nodded and asked me how long your leg looked like that. I said I did not know, that it was new and I hadn't seen it before. He nodded. He said that right now they were trying to stabilize your heart and respiration. That was the immediate goal. Once that was done, they would address the cause. So far, he said, they had no success. They were going to try to give you some other drugs to help. There was nothing to do but sit and wait. He left. I sat in the little plastic chair in the corner of the room. There was a constant activity around you. I tried to stay out of the way. I tried to make myself small. The ER doctor returned after a short time. He looked you over, the monitors, the leg with the discoloring, and said that they were still not having any luck stabilizing your heartbeat and respiration. Looking at your right leg, he said that he was very worried about this, placing his hand on the leg. He said that they wanted to put a pacemaker in. It would require them to intubate you and operate. He looked at me and said, "She's very weak," emphasizing the word very. There's a good chance she will not survive if we try this. I had to choose. You were dying right there, right now, right in front of me. I told the doctor to do it. He left to begin his preparations. I got up from the chair in the corner, alone in the room with you for a few minutes. Walking to the bed, I took your hand and bent over to talk to you. I let you know what the plan was, whispering in your ear as if it were some secret. I told you that I would be with you all of the time and would see you right after they were done. In a few minutes, 2 orderlies came in to start preparing you for the surgery. I stepped out of the way. They stripped you naked and started washing you. For a moment, from the chair in the corner as I watched, I was offended. They were touching you. You were naked. They had no right, no business. I wanted to say, be gentle, but remained silent. The team arrived to intubate you. They wheeled you out of the ER to surgery, and I was led to the waiting room. I was told an hour or so, then they would put you into ICU and come get me. I remembered the empty waiting room. It was the same one I had sat in before, right outside the doors to the ICU cardiac unit. It was late morning, around 11. It was 1 p.m. before they came to get me to bring me in to see you. It was not the same ICU room that you were in this time. This was a corner room down the hall. The ICU nurse sat outside the door, and I walked into another world. You look pretty much the same. You're unconscious and remained that way while the nurses and orderlies buzzed around you, touching this, measuring that, reading, writing notes, conferring with each other. I put your purse on the windowsill on the other side of the room. Through the window across the street was Daylight Donuts, your favorite. You would eat only cake old-fashioned with a maple glaze. I was more egalitarian in my approach to donuts and would often share yours. Once everyone was done, the nurse told me the doctor would be in soon to talk to me. I looked at the heart monitors. The pacemaker seemed to be doing its job. Your heartbeat was no longer erratic. It was smooth and regular along with your breathing. Your right leg was still discolored, and now the left had gained the same pallor. The doctor came in with the nurse assigned to the room, following from his perch outside the door. The doctor introduced himself and I myself. He told me that the surgery took longer than expected, but they were able to get the pacemaker installed and it was working. One problem resolved, at least for now. He looked at me and then back to you and then back to me. He said that, you know, she's very sick, emphasizing again the word very. But what he was most concerned with was your legs. You had thrown 2 clots. The first had caused a blockage in your right and the second your left. He said that they needed to act quickly to try to break the clots, but time was very short. He said they wanted to give you a kind of a clot buster drug and hopefully it would restore the blood flow to your legs. But it would only work within a specific time frame of the clotting occurring, and we were very much up against that clock. The problem, he said, was that in your badly weakened condition, there was a very good chance that treatment would kill you. I asked, what if we didn't give it to you? He said that you would lose your legs and more than likely not survive the amputation operation. The thought of you without legs was chilling. So the option was do nothing and watch you slowly die, or do something and maybe die. I opted for the maybe and told him to go ahead with the drug infusion. He said that it would take an hour or so to push it into you and that it worked very quickly once in. One last thing before we start, he said. What do you want us to do if she goes into arrest? I looked at him, trying to comprehend the words he was speaking. Choking on the words, finally spitting them out, I said, nothing. Do nothing. Let her go. He nodded his head and left the room. The ICU nurse came in with the bag containing the medication. It didn't look any different from all the others currently attached to you. Just another lifeline, a tiny bit of hope. He hung it up, started to drip. Once he saw it was flowing, he left the room and took up his position outside the door again. I looked at the drug now, dripping ever so slowly into the line and then into you. I stared at the drip, glancing at you, then to your legs exposed from under the blanket. I walked over to touch your legs. They felt cold. I pulled down the blanket to cover them and keep them warm. The drug was fully administered around 2:30. I looked at your legs and knew the answer without the doctor coming in. The left leg had cleared and was its normal color and was warmer to the touch. There was no change in the right one. The doctor came in and looked for himself. He didn't have to tell me the results, but he did anyways. That and the rest of it too. He said that he was sorry, but the drug clotbuster did not work as hoped. I asked what would happen to the right leg. He said it would have to be removed. There was no saving it. He said that if you survived that surgery, which was doubtful, they still had to deal with the infection. There was also the probability that there would be another clot somewhere in your body, probably a fatal one. They could not use the drug again for days. He continued, he said that your heart was damaged as well. It would take surgery to fix, open heart surgery. He said there was no chance of survival if they attempted. He finished by saying that the pacemaker would keep your heart beating, but they had run out of things to try, and they were out of bullets, he said. And that he would let me think about what I want to do now. That he was very, very sorry and left me alone in the room. I looked at you and thought about the nearly 40 years we've been together and what a strong and independent woman you are. Grabbing life with both hands and shaking it until you got your way with it, at least up until now. What would you want? I did not think that you would want to live like what was the probable outcome if you survived, missing pieces of your body. I did not see any point in putting you through any more. You could not regain consciousness. You would not regain consciousness. I did not think that your legacy should be a partial life, a partial person, not you. I looked down at you lying there. I went to the door and asked the nurse to call the doctor back. The doctor came in shortly, and with him he had 2 nurses, witnesses. The exchange we had revolved around the pacemaker and the breathing apparatus, turning them off. Without them, you would not be able to produce the electrical spark needed to work your heart and pump blood and oxygen. You would simply shut down. There was no way to know how long it would take. It could be very soon, a few hours, or it could be days. I told him to do it. It was after 3 p.m. The clock was ticking, an unstoppable force slowly winding down. It did not take long for it to start once the pacemaker was turned off. Almost immediately, your heart became erratic again. Suddenly, the heart rate was 38, then 36, while your breathing became just as irregular as your heartbeat. The oxygen level in your body started to drop. I stood there at the side of the bed, holding your hand, talking to you, watching you as you slowly faded away. I told you through the tears that it was time to go, that everything would be okay. I said that I loved you, and that would always be true. Your heartbeat slowly dropped into the 20s, and your respiration as well. You were fighting for breath, one heartbeat at a time. You were never one to give up easily, for anything. There were 2 nurses outside the door whispering to each other. Do you see the heart rate and respiration? Talking about your dropping numbers. I don't think they knew I could hear them. Your heart rate continued to drop. It would beat at 25 and then pop to 27. The next time it would be 24 and 26. Every time was lower highs and lower lows. Your heart rate dropped below 20 and your respiration was half that. The nurse came in and pulled up your eyelids and looked at the machines and left. A few minutes later, the doctor came in. He looked into your eyes, shining a light. He stood there for a few minutes. You were still breathing. I looked at the doctor and I asked if this was it. I don't know how he knew, but he said, 1 more breath, and you inhaled for the last time. There was a sound, an eerie sound, a whining noise. There was no movement on the monitors except for a straight line running across them all. The doctor reached over, flipped a switch, and they all went dark. There was only silence, a hand on my left shoulder, and a voice from far away that said, I'm very sorry. The clock behind the bed on the wall said it was 5:20 p.m., and I let go of your hand. Time passes. The loss recedes, the heart begins to heal. Tomorrow comes, the pain ebbs, but is never truly gone. You're gone. Daylight Donuts is gone. The love remains. And I haven't had a donut in years. Thank you.